Shut up and sit down.
Howdy guys, it's Andy from Big Meg's Workshop and Painting Studio, and it's Venom Crawl today. Lovely little fig. This is the one from Shadow Spear. I really enjoyed painting this one. A lot of detail on this guy. Interesting model. Early warning: this is a airbrush paint job, which is understandable as it's a vehicle. But let's get straight into it. So as always, we've got a base prime of black. Now, obviously, I'm starting off the armour, and it is a Lendil Violet, which is our darkest purple colour. A real rich colour, but doesn't show up particularly well once it's dried over the black. So it's going to take a couple of layers to get a decent coverage, just to give us a base purple. It's going to be a much more pinky purple when it's done, but this just gives us something to work from. So once we've got the Lendil Violet, which is a scale 75, we're now working with Xerxes Purple from GW. This is more of a classic purple colour now. And we're just building up that colour layer by layer. You can do this by hand as always, but I find doing vehicles a lot easier using the airbrush. It's a lot faster as well, but it's just down to preference. So as you can see, I'm just building up that colour nice and gentle, taking my time. You want to leave some of the darker colours towards the edges showing through. So now we're using Gene Sealer Purple from GW, and I'm just bringing that colour up now. It's a great colour to work with if you're using the purples, and it goes well with the Xerxes Purple. Sort of the next stage up from it, as long as you're staying on the pinky sort of side of colours. As always, as I've said, you can do any of this by layering up by hand. Also, you can use sponges as well on vehicles, and that might be something I'll do in a later video. Just doing something a little bit different with the vehicle tutorials. So once the Gene Sealer Purple gone down, it is Squid Pink. This is very, very bright, as you can see. We're getting a real vibrant colour come through. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be bringing the colours up and down with the airbrush to get a really interesting colour, nice transitions on the model. So now I've thinned down some Xerxes and some Squid Pink, and I'm going through, going straight over the top of it all. As you can see, getting some weird colour transition going on, make it look really interesting. So now it's back down to the Xerxes again, just to darken it up a bit, because we're going to be doing this a little bit, because we want an interesting colour to work with. So now it's Emperor's Children, which is a very pink colour now. As you can see, it's just adding some real interesting sort of bright shades to it now, and we're just getting that in the most raised areas all around the entire thing, just to add that extra colour to it. And then we're bringing it back down to a more of a classic purple again with the Gene Sealer Purple again, just to blend it all together and start to get something a little bit different. Now I apologise for the image on this particular section. It's a weird shape, so very difficult to get anything like a focus on there. So onto the skin work. I'm doing skin a little bit different. This is Storm Vermin Fur. Now, as you can see, I'm using the airbrush to get the Storm Vermin Fur. So I've mask-gold the areas around the mechanical sections, just to protect the pinky purple colour. And to the next layer now. It is Storm Vermin Fur with a bit of Plague Brown. Now, Plague Brown's a yellow. So I don't know why it's got that particular name. So we're making a kind of a weird yellowy skin tone. Now, as you can see, I'm using really thin paint, sort of glazing this yellowy grey up in the same way as I'd do any other skin glazing. So now it's added some more Plague Brown. I'm starting to bring out that yellow colour to it. You start seeing the yellow showing through on the grey. I'm doing this around all the sort of weird flesh areas, so also around all the pipes and anywhere around the weird sort of beetly looking thing. And what we're going to get is a sort of an insectile sort of skin colour. So even more plague brown now, and this is just adding extra highlights. We're going to start bringing that yellow out around all the piping and that, leaving some of the storm vermin fur showing through, but at this point it's very much a sort of a yellowy, dirty brown colour. Although keep some of the grey showing through because it keeps it that base tone, making it look a bit more interesting. So one more layer with the plague brown now. It's pretty much pure plague brown. There's a touch of the grey in there, and just final highlights on this, just to bring that weird yellowy browny colour together. So once you've started building this colour up, it really starts to stand out, and you get this really interesting look to it. So just a bit more of the same colour now, just to just tidy up any areas where the colour doesn't quite look right, just to make sure you got the highlights where they need to be. So next it is a wash with burnt umber. I found this wash from one of our previous videos, and this is perfect for it. You could go with Agrax. Agrax Earthshade would be a great colour for this. It's sort of that sort of yellowy, greeny hue to the brown wash, but burnt umber just added a little bit more definition. That's a bit more brown. So once the wash has gone in, I've added some Rakarth flesh into the previous paint mixture. I'm building up the layers with this Rakarth flesh mix now. As you can see, it's still really thin paint. I'm just using it mainly to tidy up and add a few extra highlights around the raised areas of the skin. We're also using it to clean up any areas where the wash has sat where I don't want it. So a bit more Rakarth flesh into the mixture now, and you can see I'm starting to build up those highlights a little bit more. Now I've had a chance to clean up where the wash has gone, and I've started to focus on the highlights again, bringing those weird colours together, making it look that bit more interesting. So this is pretty much pure Rakarth flesh at this stage. Now, I've not used a lot of Rakarth flesh, but I do like. I have found it as a very interesting colour for highlighting. Sort of goes with everything. So it's definitely one which should be in the toolkit out if you haven't got it already. It's a good colour for highlighting most colours I've found. So it really worked well with these weird grey colours. So now what I'm doing is adding some really thin down red tone or Carabert Crimson, depending on what you've got available to you. Now I thin this down so it doesn't pull particularly, so it didn't pull too much. I'm making the adding some definition into the colours around where the pipe and things would connect to make it look really sore. I'm also doing the exact same thing with green tone now. Any green wash will work, and it's just adding some sort of weird bruising, add a bit more colour to the skin work, so you get this really weird outlandish colour, which is the sort of thing you'd get on a Demon Engine. So now I'm adding some blue tone into it, and this is just again really thin down. Any blue wash would do, and I'm just adding that into the same areas as the red and the green. It's just to make the this flesh look really worn and bruised, make it look a bit more interesting. So onto the metals, and this is a base layer of Vallejo's gunmetal. Lead Belcher works fine. It's just and I wanted a sort of a mid-coloured silver to start off with. so it gives me a bit of room to move up and down. And I'm just getting a nice good quality layer all over all the metalwork areas, just to build up some more colour, make the thing look a little bit more interesting. The next section, adding some more colour into the mechanical areas. So this is decayed metal, scale 75 colour. Now this is pretty much the same as what bronze. You could use that equally well. I'm just adding a bit of colour to the metallics, as just flat silver would look really dull, and this model's got some really interesting features. So once I've got the base metal colours down, non-oil, I've layered it up twice on this, as you're aware. I do thin down my washes as well. I thin them down quite heavily, as I find it gives me a bit more control over the depth of the shades. Once I've got that down, it is gunmetal again, just to tidy up anywhere where the wash is stained, where I didn't need it. It also adds an initial early highlight to the metal areas without it being too obvious. So you can use the base color also as a sort of a gentle highlight once you've got a wash down. So the next layer is chainmail. Once I've got a decent wash on it and the initial highlight, I'm using chainmail, which is sort of a slightly lighter colour to this gunmetal. So it really works well with the gunmetal. It's from the same range of the layer paints. It's generally it's what I use for the next layer up. And then it is steel. Now, as you can see, really vibrant colour, but I'm just using the edge of a brush where possible to get the edges, and any areas what I get a little bit heavy on, just dampening the brush and using that to spread out the paint so it doesn't look too odd. I'm just gently working the extreme edges with this colour to make the model that little bit more interesting, and just add a few little edge highlights. So onto the trim now, and that is decayed metal. Again, as I said, what bronze would work perfectly as this. Decayed metal is a real good, strong, rich colour. Pretty much goes over anything, so you don't need to black out too much with this one as well, which I think is really handy, as it removes a step of painting from the process, so you can actually get things done a bit quicker. As you can see, I'm just trying to be as careful as possible, getting that colour all over the model. So once I've got the decayed metal everywhere, I'm now adding old copper. Now this has been thinned down quite heavily, so it's not quite a glaze, but it does allow me to stretch the paint a little bit, as it's quite a vibrant colour shift from the decayed metal. It's rather orangey. So it allows me to just stretch out the paint and blend it in a little bit. After the old copper, I've now washed with a mixture of strong tone and black. Army paint strong tones, similar to Agrax. I've added a bit of black in there to just darken it down a bit, as I wanted a lot of depth onto this metalwork. So the next highlight is Victorian brass, which, as you can see, is very much on the gold sort of end of things. I'm just starting to use this as almost an edge highlight, still using the edge of the brush, but I'm trying to keep the layer on this one quite streamlined. I don't want too much of this colour showing through. It's very much a highlight at this stage. After the Victorian brass, it is Amber Alchemy, which is something along the lines of a vibrant gold. I'm not quite sure what the GW equivalent would be. It's a very goldy colour anyway. I'm using this as a nice bright highlight for the extreme edges. After that, it is onto the bone. And the bone is start off with Iroko, which is a GW Scale 75 paint. I'm just getting that nice, good quality base there all over the bone colours. Now there's not much of this on the model, so I'm just adding some into the teeth as well, around that weird sort of internal mouth thing. So I'm also adding a layer of thin down Agrax Earthshade into that, just to add a bit of depth. Gives me a bit more ability to see the weird teeth on the model. Into the glowy bits, and the glowy bits is started off with Warp Zone Glow by GW. It's going to take a couple of layers, just getting a base colour in there, because I'm going to be doing some OSL on this, but I wanted something just to work with to give me a bit more depth on them areas. The back onto the bone, as you can see, it's had an Agrax wash, and now we're adding some Iroko into it just to start tidying it up, building up that nice even colour what you need. Now you can do this for any of the bone work. Fundamentally they're just the same, but sometimes it's just good form to add different colours into it. So on here now I'm starting to pick out the individual teeth. As you can see, I'm using a Winsor & Newton 00 for this, as the teeth are really small but quite pronounced once you've got that wash in. So some edge highlights on the armour plating, which is G-Sealer purple with a bit of ivory in there. Now I've added the ivory because it's not a flat white, you get a better colour transition with it, as there's a touch of yellow in there, and that really brightens up them, that colour nicely without making it too chalky. You're always better to use an off-white rather than a flat white, as the colour transition is a little bit nicer. So again, added some more of the ivory in there, so it's pretty much 50-50 at this stage. I'm just bringing out those highlights of the real pronounced areas. So it's got a second thin layered highlight in there on the most visible and raised points. So yeah, I've got some nice edge highlights in there, and now I'm going back over into the engine sections with the Warp Zone Glow. So I'm just adding Warp Zone Glow around all the areas where the mechanical sort of weird ghost engine thing is going, and as you can see I'm just adding it liberally around the model, also around the eyes, as they look like they're going to glow as well. It just adds a little bit more more colour to it, makes it a little bit more interesting. So I've also fired a little bit of the Warp Zone Glow into the centre of the mouth on the side, just to bring it up a bit. So now it is Toxic Waste Goo, which is a very yellowy green colour, really vibrant. Moot green would work for it. As you can see, I'm just starting to focus on the exhaust ports and any of the really hot sections, just bring it all together, making them colours stand out a little bit more. Take your time with this. The airbrush does the work for you. It's a lot easier to do it with the airbrush, although again by hand, as long as you use the thin paints, using a combination of dry brushing and highlighting, you get the same effect. So onto the tongue, I'm using pretty much the same colours as all the weird ghostly bits. I figured it makes sense for it to have a weird greeny yellow tongue, make it look a bit more demonic. So I'm just building up the Warp Zone Glow with the Toxic Waste Goo, just to make the colours look that bit more interesting and make it more visible. Now it's pretty much pure toxic waste goo, thinned down relatively well. I'm just going to finalise some extra highlights into the glowing sections. I'm doing this by hand as you get a bit more control over it, and it allows you to place the real brightest colours exactly where you want them to be. So onto the eyes, doing exactly the same thing as what I did with the energy sections, using pretty much pure toxic waste goo at this point, and just making them eyes really stand out. Same again with the energy sections as well. And you can also throw a bit onto the other pipe work where they're going to be at the most hot. So now I've got some burnt umber in the airbrush. Cool thing about burnt umber, works great on vehicles. You can make anything better with burnt umber, especially if you've got any kind of gold on there. It just allows you to just adds a bit of grime to the model. If you keep it nice and thin on the airbrush, it shows through the original colour, and it just allows you to build up some real filth onto the model, making it look a bit more interesting. Anyway, nice quick one for you there, guys. Thank you for watching. As always, got some huge thank yous, but I'd just like to talk about the model briefly first. It was a lot of fun to paint this one, quite interesting as it's a really weird model. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, as it was quite different to what I would normally paint. As you know, we tend to stick to quite dark colours, so doing it this way was a lot more colourful than what we'd normally do. Anyway, thank you for watching this. If you want to catch us on any of our other videos, want to see more stuff like this, please hit like, hit subscribe, share with your friends. Got some thank yous to make now, so massive thank yous to our top Patreons, which is the Orc Boys, Ludwig Hofbauer, Warren, D-Wack, Kit Lindquist, Agnes of Dawn, Mark. You're our top paying Patreons. Thank you for every penny you give us. It really does help us out. If you do decide to go down the route of Patreon, you do get early access to all our videos by at least a few weeks. Also, I'd like to thank the Outpost, which are our affiliate link. The link will be below. If you were to use this link, you get reduced price models for everything you need, and we also get store credit from you just using our links as well. Anyway, that's enough of me waffling. Thank you guys, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.